I'm also a wife and mother of four, so three of my children are grown. And actually, two of my sons made me cry today, but they were good tears. They were, one son sent me a link to a music video that was really sweet. He's like, "This reminds me of you, Mom, and your endless support of us." It was a Tyler Childers song. And then my other son, Colby, my 22-year-old, just moved out of his first apartment that he lived in all by himself to a different apartment that he's going to live in all by himself. And like, seeing these milestones that they reach. So I love being a mom. I love being a helper. I'm an LPC candidate. I just, parenting classes for family and children's services. I just love to help. But really, for me, I get the opportunity to go to a lot of different trainings. And so I learn about all sorts of different things that I'm able to apply. And so this particular thing that we're going to talk about as a school counselor, at one of our district school counselor meetings, we had Dr. B. Keller Dupree, the absolute guru of all things. She is a professor at Northeastern State University, but she taught the counselors about this topic, the four tendencies. So your tendency is basically, you might have done little quizzes on what your personality profile is, what's your type, that kind of a thing. So this is a similar type of thing to that, but your tendencies is, it really impacts how you see the world and why you do what you do. And the more knowledge that we can have of our own tendencies, like kind of why in the world do we do the things that we do, the way that we do those things, the more that we're aware of that, and also those around us, whether that's our partner, whether that's our kids, whether that are people that we're working with, the more we can understand what their tendency is, it helps us realize that it helps their actions make sense, because their actions make sense to them based on their tendency, and it might not make sense to me if I have a different tendency. It also can really help you be more effective with motivation and with change in yourself and in a group or a team or a family. If we really understand where people are coming from, because there's not one right way to do everything. Thank goodness we have a lot of different personality types, or the world would be either no one gets anything done or it'd be really boring, and somewhere in between. So, but this information really helped me, because the more I learn and grow and understand myself, the more effective I can be to actually reach the goals and things that I have for myself. So there is in the chat section the link to the Four Tendencies quiz. It's 13 quick questions, so it's not difficult. And just kind of hold on to whatever your type is, because we will refer to that. So here's kind of the goals for tonight. So the goals for tonight, we're going to talk about a common area, because the goal is helping you understand why you are the way you are, especially when it comes to where you might want to make some change in your life. And what's a common area that all of us could have some change? Stress relief. So we're going to talk a little bit about that common area for stress relief. Have you thinking about that? Learn about the four tendencies and which tendency we have. Focus on a strategy for stress relief, which is gratitude. So the lots of interesting research about working gratitude into your daily life. And then taking that information, then use our knowledge of the four tendencies to then maybe make an effective plan about how we could incorporate more gratitude in our lives, which will then also help us with stress relief. So kind of all these little pieces tie together. I do my best to wrap it all up with a bow by the time we get there. Plus, I'm just a nerd, so I just like to share lots of information. You'll discover that about me. Now, Erin had mentioned, one thing, the podcast and the YouTube channel that they have. One of the classes that I've done for them in the past was about mindful self-compassion. And I always like to just remind people of this idea, if you've never heard of it, because it really is how we talk to ourselves. And I'm included a link. You'll get all of these handouts and everything. The presentation will be emailed to you. I've included a link to the podcast, because I think that actually goes really well with the topic tonight, because we're really hard on ourselves. We can be so patient and understanding and kind with a friend who's trying to make some changes, or, experiencing some setbacks. But man, we don't talk to ourselves like that. So this mindful self-compassion is really learning to talk to yourself like you would a good friend. It doesn't rely on self-esteem, meaning you have to be better than other people or feel like I'm better than at least half people out there for me to feel good about myself. Self-compassion doesn't require that. I don't have to be better than others. I get to be me. Now, it doesn't mean that because I get to be me, that I'm not always trying to improve and grow, and learn from my mistakes. So it's not like a lazy view of life. It's more of a accepting and understanding view of life. And it really creates a better attitude for change. It produces oxytocin in the brain when I'm thinking these self-compassionate thoughts and doing these self-compassionate exercises. So for me, I do feel like if you really are in that season where you're really trying to make some changes, really trying to understand yourself, the information from mindful self-compassion could definitely be beneficial for you. So I did include a link to that. But we're not going to spend all our time talking about that. So let's just kind of start off. I know that we are in a digital class, and sometimes that can make interaction a little bit more awkward, in that, not everybody wants to speak up. And some people love it because, hey, I don't have to do this in person. I can just send a message in the chat section. But I want you to think for a minute, what are your main stressors in your life? Um, and go ahead and send me a few things, if you feel like sharing with the group, of some things that are stressors in your life. Um, and I think that that could be helpful for us. What are some stressors in your life? If it's easier for you to say that out loud, feel free to just raise your hand and you can unmute your microphone and share that with us. I know for me, some of the stressors in my life are being a mom of a girl for the first time, a 13-year-old middle school girl. So that's a stressor, knowing that she's my last one at home, and also trying to juggle work and being a mom and being a partner and all those kinds of things, and some health issues, just really trying to maintain. I have type 2 diabetes, so working through those things. Those are some of the stressors in my life, and managing other people's emotions. That's my job as a school counselor. So trying to juggle all those hats. All right, some other stressors. Let's see if we can all relate to this. Time. There's never enough time. Being on time, so many different things. The health of our parents. Oh, Bob, I'm right there with you. I'm in that sandwich generation where now I'm starting to drive my parents to the increasing number of doctor's appointments because they don't need to be on the road right now. School and internship. Oh, yes, Michael. Yes, you're almost done, Michael. So hang in there. Keeping up with work, family time, and college. Yeah, those are big stressors. I still remember when I was knee deep in grad school and college, this is the end of the semester. That is a lot of different things to juggle. And not any of those were the same, except for like the school internship in college. Those are, well, and we have some family time. Everyone has their own unique stressors. Everyone has their own unique challenges. And this is what makes us feel stretched. And I also, at our district counselor meeting, some of these things that are embedded in the PowerPoint are even handouts that you can use, because they use this handout with the teachers. They did a professional development for teachers, and kind of handed this out where teachers were writing down, hey, where are you stretched? This could be a great opportunity for something to do in a family meeting. Hey, where are you stretched? Because if we understand our kiddos and ourselves and, our family unit, that's helpful. We also have work, health, family, and responsibilities. Lots of things to juggle. Now, the other thing to be aware of is, I love this. One of our school counselors came up with this one. She found this. How stretched do you feel on the stretchometer? One, feeling great. Two, doing okay. Three, stress tricks are working. Four, uh-oh, things are really piling up. Five, too much to do. Set, oh, they're not even in the right order. Six, lumpy throat. Seven, naughty stomach. Eight, feeling stretched. Nine, I need help. And 10, feeling like I'm ready to snap. Where would you be at? Throw me a number in the chat section. Actually, I need to change those numbers. And the cool thing that she did with this is she actually gave all of the teachers on her team, she printed off this little strip that looks kind of like a ruler that's got the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and got them these little mini clothespin clips. And so this was just hanging outside the teacher's door, and the teacher would put a clothespin on where the teacher was at, where she was feeling. or he was feeling. And that the counselor knew that, hey, I think I'm going to spend a little extra time in this classroom if she had someone that was getting to that 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10. All right, let's see what we have in the audience. I've got some fives. It's too much to do. I've got some threes. The stress tricks are working. Some fours. Things are piling up. Another five. Too much to do. Michael, I'm surprised it's just a five. With you being at the end of the semester, I would think you might be at a seven. So we've got some fives, fours, and threes seem to be the range that we're working with. And you'll note that you go through different seasons. Here's the other thing. If you are, which is we aren't isolated all by ourselves. We might be at a three, and someone else in our group, whether that's a coworker or a family member, they might be at an eight or a nine. And so having an awareness of where people are at on that stress meter could be really helpful to know. But I thought that was a really cool thing that one of our school counselors did. She took the information about the four tendencies and kind of put it in this format. So that could even be a nonverbal way of communicating with your kids. Hey, where are you at today? Having something like this posted on the refrigerator or outside their door, and they can put a little mark on that could be a helpful way of figuring out where are you at. Doing some sort of regular reflection on where I'm at, because sometimes when you are deep in the stressors, you don't realize how how overwhelmed you might be feeling. All right. Now, just also remember there's good stress and bad stress. The goal in life is not to get rid of all stress because we do need stress. Just like I teach anger management, the goal in life is never to just completely rid ourselves of anger. Anger serves a purpose, stress serves a purpose, but there's good stress and there's bad stress. So, good stress are things that warn us of danger. All right. So, if I'm stressed out about traffic driving through Dallas and the construction, that stress is making me more aware of my surroundings. So I can somehow manage to drive through construction in Dallas or whatever it is that might be a danger. It boosts your memory skills. So, just that anxiety, that stress that you feel right before a test or right before a paper or right before having to do some important task, that can actually boost your memory skills on that short term basis, keeps you on your toes, makes you do what you should. The stress of seeing a Oklahoma Highway Patrol car on the road when you might be going 75 and the speed limit is 70, that is a good stress, to try to make you do what you need to do instead of just kind of sitting back and doing nothing. So, as a parent, the stress of making dinner for my family that just seems to need to eat every day. That's a good stress because it's making me do what I need to do, some of my obligations. And it does help you to grow. Stress helps you to grow in many ways. Also, if you are overwhelmed by stress, just think about that. Some of the most difficult seasons in your life have been where you've experienced the most growth. You've had to get rid of dysfunctional thinking that was keeping you from being able to maintain health and happiness. You've had to get rid of some dysfunctional habits. You've had to adjust some relationships that might have needed to be adjusted. All of stress can help you grow. But then there's bad stress when we feel overwhelmed all the time, when it creates conflict with our family and friends, when we overcommit ourselves. So, several of you mentioned time being one of your stressors. One of our tendencies, the obliger tendency that we're going to learn about, which I have, we can have a tendency to overcommit ourselves. And, one of the guidance lessons that I'm doing this month with my third and fourth graders at my school, I'm a school counselor at Jenks East Elementary, is we're talking about habit number 7 on the 7 habits of healthy kids. And it is called sharpening the saw, which is all about finding balance. If we are overcommitted, we are not in balance because we only have so much time in a day. And if I'm having to spend too much of a percentage of time on these things that I've overcommitted myself, then I am having to give up some time that might be for me taking care of my body, for me taking care of my heart and my relationships, and my opportunities to recharge. It can make you tense and anxious. It can fill you with self-doubt, and it can have significant pressure over projects, over grades, those kinds of things. So again, not all stress is bad. There is some good stress, but you might start to analyze the stressors that you're feeling. Are those good stress? Is that good stress or bad stress? All right. So all of us universally can agree that we experience stress. All of us universally could agree we have room to grow in the area of stress management and all those kinds of things, whether that be making some changes to minimize stress, changing our thoughts or approach to different stressors, whatever that might be. All right. So that's an opportunity for change. Now, what do you do? This is where your tendency, your four tendencies, will show up. What do you do? How do you respond to all of life's stressors and expectations? Are you someone who you do it all? Are you someone where you do what is important to you? Um, do you do what is important to others? Or do you do none of it? What's your response? All right. A lot of that tendency is tied to one of the four tendencies. I am very much I do what's important to others before I do what's important to me. That's a kind of a part of my personality type. I still, even my sister and I are very different. And she is like so organized. I still remember when we were younger, if we were going on a vacation and she was what? I think she was like in eighth grade when she'd do this stuff. We are going on a vacation, she would make a list of all the outfits that she was going to wear. And then as she washed those clothes, she'd go ahead and have it in the suitcase. You know, me, I would throw everything in there at the very last minute. So, you know, she is one who's really able to be productive. My oldest son is really able to be productive. Actually, all of my sons are now. But what's your tendency when you feel stressed out? All of that is tied to your tendency. So I'm going to, let's see here, click on this so it'll show on the screen. If you clicked on that, I'm going to put it back in the chat section. If you did not have a chance to take the little quiz, it's a 13-minute quiz. 13 question quiz. And at the end, it's going to tell you what your tendency is. So super simple questions that we'll do. So I'm going to give us 2 minutes of things that for you to have a chance to quickly go through and finish that. If you need that time, because I see a couple of us kind of joined a little bit after. So I'm just going to give us a couple of minutes to finish that and see what your tendency might be. All right. I'm going to go ahead and start talking about this. Once you have gotten your tendency, if you would mind sharing that in the chat section, if you are an upholder, if you are an obliger, if you are a questioner, or if you are a rebel. I love to see who we have in the house with us. Upholders, we got an upholder, we have a questioner, we have an obliger. Let's see here, a couple of obligers. I have found an upholder. A lot of times, if you're in the helping profession, you can often be an obliger. So we've got some upholders, some questioners, some obligers. I'm looking for my lone rebel. Wondering if anyone on here is a rebel. I don't know if I would have a rebel that would show up to a digital class in the evening, because why would I do that? No one can make me do that. I don't know if that would be you. It was so funny we did this quiz in our district counselor meeting, and there was one of us in there, about 40 of us in there. There was one guy who was a rebel, and he was a counselor, and he was a high school counselor. And guess what? He totally got those rebel kids. He like just understood them. Whereas for those of us who are upholders and obligers, you know, people pleasers, you know, why would you do that? And he's like, I totally get it. And so he really connected with the kids. All right. Now, here is something that you need to know about yourself. There is nothing wrong with you, your tendency. Your tendency is your tendency, just like there is nothing wrong with your personality type. There is nothing wrong with that. That is just who you are. Where we run into conflicts and what I call cognitive dissonance, you know, like we've got this conflict, this internal conflict of maybe how we want to be versus how we are. The whole goal of this is understand yourself so you know how to work with your tendency to still get to do what you want, to still make the changes that you need to make, if you need to make those, to motivate yourself. So, all right, so upholders, I like this little graphic. Upholders, they meet outer expectations as well as inner expectations. So they can meet deadlines and all these things, but they don't even have to be told what to do all the time. Obligers, they meet outer expectations, what other people expect of us, but we resist some of those inner expectations. And it's hard for me to get motivated to do things for myself, but if someone else needs me to do that, you bet I'll do that. A rebel, they resist outer expectations and inner expectations. And now that doesn't mean they don't do anything. Their motivator is different. And a questioner, they resist outer expectations and they meet inner expectations, meaning they're going to question, why am I doing this? Was this the best way? I need to research this a little bit. And they hold themselves to some really high inner expectations once those questions have been answered. All right. Um, my I love this. My directors might disagree. There is nothing wrong with me. All right, you need to take the Four Tendencies quiz and take it to work and say, this is what we're doing for staff bonding, because their way of viewing the world is different than your way of viewing the world. Now, within any of these tendencies, of course, we can have some bad habits and some things, that all of us can change and grow. But I really like this really helped me in my understanding of myself. All right. So I'm going to pull this up and we're going to kind of go through these different things. Let me make this a little bit bigger so we might be able to see this. So Gretchen Rubin, she wrote the book, The Four Tendencies, and she's done a lot of work with businesses and with groups of people, just helping them from this teamwork perspective about how we can do this. And I love this quote. When we can see other people's perspectives, we understand why, from their points of view, that their actions make sense to them. Their actions might not make sense to me because, from my point of view, from the glasses that I see the world through, this is how I do things. Why would you ever want to do anything different? Why wouldn't you want to help? I'm an obliger. Like, why wouldn't you want to help? And it's been a beautiful thing for me as a mother. Every single one of my children is very different. And as far as obligers go, there's not a single obliger in my family. My middle son has a little bit more of a tendency to be an obliger, but he's more of a questioner than an obliger. Upholders, we want to know what should be done. Questioners, I want to know why. Give me justifications. Obligers, I need accountability. So I'll do it and I'll do a great job, but I need a deadline. I need someone checking on me, because it's really easy for me to get sidetracked. And rebels, they want freedom to do something their own way. One of my sons is a rebel. And oh my gosh, it drove me crazy because in high school, I mean, this kid is brilliant, graduated with a 2.6 GPA because high school in his mind was stupid. It was a have to. Why am I doing this? So he even calculated with his brilliant math brain how many assignments he could avoid turning in just so he could pass the class. If he had just done the assignments, if he didn't like a teacher, he wasn't going to do the work. He didn't care because in his mind, high school was stupid. It was a have to. Now, when he went to school after high school, 4.0. He even had a teacher. He was in this really intense. He went out to this school in North Carolina to become a NASCAR technician. And it was the second semester, and one of the teachers said, raise your hand if you have a 4 point. So he raised his hand. And the teacher's like, well, you can kiss that 4 point goodbye. Hardly anyone makes an A in this class. Like almost no one every semester makes an A in this class. My son walked up to him after class. What was he at the time? 18 years old, walks up to this grown man who has massive amounts of experience. And he's like, oh, you said I'm not going to make an A? Watch me. And so my son was the one that studied like crazy because he was literally just going to prove the guy wrong. On the last day, when he got his report card, like their printout of all that, he went and found that professor. He made a 99% of his class, and he's like, I told you. And I'm like, you just had to do that, didn't you, Colby? But for me as a mom, it didn't make sense to me why he wouldn't do his work in high school. I mean, like, why wouldn't you do that? He's not a people pleaser, but he is a hard worker. He's a team player. He's a great, great guy, but he's not going to do something just because you told him to. And he's certainly not going to do it if you talk to him in a disrespectful way. If you talk down to him, he expects, and so it's really been interesting watching him navigate and be able to advocate for himself. And also, I mean, again, he's a great team player, but he's not just going to do just because this is what everyone is doing. It's not how it works. Now, this handout also will be emailed to you, and I did put a link to it in the chat section. All right, but we had some upholders. All right, you are ready to meet internal and external expectations. You're self-directed, so you can meet deadlines, work on projects. You can take initiative often without much supervision. You typically tend to like routine, and it's hard to break that routine. Don't like making mistakes, and because of that, you can become angry and defensive if someone suggests that you've made a mistake. You put a high value on follow through. So if you're an upholder and the people around you aren't upholders, that's really frustrating for you. So basically, don't tell them you're going to do something and then not do it. I mean, that really drives you nuts when people don't follow through. Michael, I know Michael, he is doing his internship at the same counseling agency that I work for. And when people miss appointments and you're in the middle of your internship, drives you insane. Like you said, you were going to be there, be there. It's very frustrating. They may need to be reminded that unlike others, others aren't necessarily energized by getting things done. Some people like upholders, you love that checklist and plowing through stuff. My oldest is an upholder, and it drives him nuts when other people, he's like, okay, this is the deadline for turning things in, just turn it in, give me your t-shirt order. They might have trouble delegating responsibility when they don't feel like other people are dependable. Now, tons of strengths. Very self-starter, self-motivated, conscientious, reliable, thorough, eager to understand and meet expectations, no problems with the rules, regulations, performance targets. Not to say that they just accept all rules. They might have some opinions about those rules, but some possible weaknesses. It's easy to get defensive or rigid. Like there's this way of doing things because in your mind, this feels like the best way to do things. An inquisitor, uneasy when it's not clear what the rules are. I don't like this vague. I want to clearly lay out your expectations. Impatient when others need reminders, deadlines, or supervision. Can be demanding and over scrupulous. So that would be again, it's not a one size fits all description, but as an upholder, that might be your tendency. All right. Any of my upholders in the house, do you have anything to say about that or something that stood out to you about that? And if it's easier for you to unmute your microphone, please, by all means, do that. Anything that stood out to you about that?
I think the thing that stood out to me is I'm an obliger by nature,
Mhm.
but I think I'm actually in all four categories.
Yeah, and we can have little pieces of everything. Because I know one of my sons is a little bit of an upholder and a little bit of a questioner. He's not entirely one or the other. What upholder tendencies stood out to you? Anyone else?
I think they all fit. I mean, right
They all
there,
fit?
it just pretty much describes me. When I sit there and I think about all the things that just irritate me or set my skin to crawling, or and you're sitting here and you're describing this, the strengths, the weaknesses, the dealing with the upholder. It just it's like, oh wow, look at that.
Yeah. And then here's the thing. Every personality type has strengths and weaknesses. And so I think the beautiful part about a team or a family, or if we are in a managerial position, realizing that it's very easy because this is such a productive personality type. Like my oldest, oh my gosh, he's so productive. And it just blows me away the stuff that he is so goal oriented. And he's always giving me tips. Even when he was in college, he even sent me videos of, Mom, here's how you can meal prep. Because he knew mom was not doing any meal prep. Mom was like waking up and, oh my gosh, oh, what are we eating for lunch today? And to have my sophomore in college student saying, Mom, look at how much money I saved by doing this meal prep is pretty cute. But I mean, understanding ourselves, I think the hardest thing for him sometimes would be to, why do you do it that way? That's not the best way to do it. But realizing that we can still get to that same destination through a lot of different routes, through different trails that we travel on. All right, so those are my upholders. Then we have our questioners. Oh, this was so frustrating because this endless questions. My middle son, when he was in college, and he had to say things out loud to at least three or four people if he was trying to make a decision. But all along, he was processing. And then he'd be like, yeah, I needed to hear that. I needed to get different perspectives on that. And then he would make really, really good decisions. The only problem was in college, he would like to call me at like 10:45 p.m. on a Friday because, he was young and I was old. You don't want to be talking to an educator at 10:45 p.m. on a Friday night. There's not a lot of emotional reserve left when I've been dealing with little children all day. So they question expectations. They need an expectation if they believe it's justified. They put a high value on reason, research, and information. What field has he gone into? Research. They follow the advice of authorities only if they trust their expertise. They're not just going to blindly follow someone. They follow their own judgment, sometimes when it flies in the face of experts who allegedly know more. I know one thing that I found interesting for him is he was in leadership when he was in college and he was a pre-med major. And so really intense, at times almost felt a little toxic, like toxic competition. And so he did not like toxic competition. And so for him, he like questioned this. Why does this have to be this way? And he wound up becoming president of a student organization, completely changed the culture because he questioned it. It wasn't like, oh, this is a checklist on my resume. No, this isn't okay. And here's why. And here's the research to show this. And it was so impactful because it was a really, there were lots and lots of kids in this organization, AEP, down at Baylor. And then they asked him, he actually helped rewrite some of the curriculum for the incoming freshman pre-med majors. It was like an advisory kind of class that they had to take with what that wasn't just like a specific science or something. He rewrote the curriculum because he said, this is not preparing kids for to have this different kind of perspective. This and the professors who had written the curriculum and set up the course because he developed a relationship with them, they were open to that. I thought that was just really beautiful to see. He questioned everything. Their persistent questioning might make them seem uncooperative or defiant. They hate anything arbitrary, like 5 garments to a fitting room. Why? Is there a reason? My 13-year-old daughter is very much a questioner as well. Like if we have a guideline for screen time, well, why? I mean, why can't I do that? Why can't I have a phone in my room? And you have to explain it to her. And then if it makes sense, okay, then I'm not going to fight you on this. They may dislike being questioned themselves because they consider their actions very carefully. So they find it irritating if you or insulting that they even have to justify why they're doing what they're doing. And they might have trouble delegating decision making because they suspect others don't have sufficient knowledge, to make this action. So some great strengths, very data driven, interested in creating systems that are efficient and effective, willing to play the devil's advocate, buck the system, which can bring about some really beautiful change, and strong-willed. Possible weaknesses can suffer. I love this analysis paralysis. This is where got to find the right answer and the perfect way to do things. Impatient with what they see as others' complacency. Crackpot potential, which means I had to look it up. I'm like, wait, crackpot potential. Crackpot potential is they might have some ideas that kind of seem a little crazy. Like, what? That doesn't make sense. That's just not the way because they just don't want to do everything the way it's always been done. So they can sometimes think out of the box based on research, and that can be really frustrating. Unable to accept closure on matters that others consider settled. So easy to bring things up again. Defy expectations that others find fair or at least non-optional, like traffic regulations. Like, why? What is the purpose of this law? And they may resist answering others' questions. So those are my questioners. So one of my sons, he's kind of a questioner with some upholder tendencies. My daughter is very much a questioner. I need to know why I'm doing this. And I mean, that showed up when she was 3. She would ask questions that would trap you. Um, like she already knew the answer to the question, but it was just basically to prove her point. So she has like an inner lawyer in her. Any questioners, like anything that stood out to you about being a questioner? Let's see, because I had some, let's see. I had one questioner. Yeah, at least one who said they were a questioner. Hannah, did anything stand out to you? Let's see here. So much. All right. And so, understand yourself. Questioners, we need questioners because they are not just going to do the status quo. And I found, and it can bring about such beautiful change. I love it. I love it. All right. So also I forgot to mention the strategies. A key strategy for habit change with an upholder would be scheduling it. So like if you have a goal for a change, scheduling those steps, what's my timeline? What's my deadline? What's my checklist? For a questioner, a good strategy is the strategy of clarity. If you are working with or have a questioner in your group of people that you work with or in your family, clarify things. Be able and willing to, identify the why behind things. Then we have our obligers. That's me. Super easy to get along with because I'm making sure everybody's okay. We readily meet outer expectations, which be other expectations for us, but struggle to meet inner expectations, meaning I'm going to take care of everyone else before I necessarily take care of myself. They put a high value on meeting commitments to others. I'll do anything for a client, for a patient, for a family member, of that going above and beyond. They require deadlines, oversight, monitoring, and other forms of accountability. And I always just use about myself, I would always be like, come on, I'm a grown woman. Why do I have to have a deadline? Well, there was me last night, taxes day. That's a big deadline. And I was so proud of myself because I didn't do an extension. But when did I start the taxes? Sunday afternoon. But the only thing for me to get that done was, well, it's kind of a federal deadline. You got to get it done, but I got it done. Whereas my son had his done before the end of January. So and so for me, I often will set a deadline as in I'll make an appointment with my assistant principal and say, hey, I want to talk to you about scheduling groups. When are you available this week? Because then I know that I've got to have my group scheduled in time for that meeting. I've learned that about myself. I need that external pressure. Might have trouble setting limits on others' demands. Might be exploited by people who take advantage of them. And because of that, we might feel resentful and fall into obliger rebellion. It's also could become sort of passive aggressive. Like, I'm so sick and tired of doing everything for everyone. I'm just not going to do anything anymore. When really, if we got a little better about setting some of those boundaries, it would we wouldn't feel so overwhelmed all the time. They can have trouble delegating because they feel that some expectations, they're personal. Like, I need to meet this expectation to show that I care, kind of a thing. They must have systems of external accountability in order to meet some of those inner expectations. I really found that when I was reworking my what I ate and things like that. An inner expectation is I wanted to become healthier to manage my type 2 diabetes, but I needed to know that Dr. Gearhart was going to be checking my hemoglobin A1C before I ate that churro. So, I needed that external accountability. And that's why I actually found my glucose monitor so helpful because it gave me a number. That was accountability. The number said your blood sugar is this. And a lot of that had to do with what I chose to put in my mouth. So for me, I needed that. And then I was able to make some really amazing change that I hadn't been able to make in, a decade. So, and likely strengths, we're reliable and responsible. We want to help. A team player, a good boss, a responsive leader, feel great obligation to meet others' expectations. So we really do want to and are willing to meet others' expectations and go that extra mile. We're highly committed. Some of our weaknesses, we can become resentful about what's being asked of us by other people who just put themselves first. Like that seem to be more. We could label it as selfish when really what it might just be is they have boundaries. I had a gal that I worked with, and when we were divvying up our family, she's like, I only want to see families that are on this side of the river because I don't want to drive across the river. And inside, I was like, well, who are you to say that you want to drive across the river? Guess what? That was a boundary. If she could have all of her families on this side of the river, that made it easier for her, more time with her family, and she was still doing a great job. But for me, I actually, I was at first kind of taken aback by that. So we may show a destructive pattern of obliger rebellion where we'll overcommit and then, rebel. We're exploitable. People can take advantage of us. We're the ones who get called to sign up for all the volunteer activities, have trouble saying no or imposing limits, and need outer accountability to meet some of those inner expectations. So those can be some of our strengths or weaknesses. And really a great strategy for success is accountability, setting up accountability for ourselves. A good friend, a coworker, creating deadlines that we communicate to others so that they can ask us about those things. And those can be great strategies. So Any of my obligers in the house, did anything stand up to you? Bob, good thought. It would be interesting to see how many supervisors deal with these issues. Sometimes they're just not aware. If you don't have a reflective leader, it's very easy for supervisors to think my way is the best way. Um, and how that's what I love about like Gretchen's work. Like I printed off her little tendencies. She's got a bunch of information online. She actually trains supervisors on how to get the most out of your employee group based on their tendency. If you understand that, how you're going to utilize those strengths and accommodate for those weaknesses and make a really powerfully strong team. So I thought it was very interesting. What is destructive about obliger rebellion? It can be a destructive about obliger rebellion is just like, forget it, I'm not doing this. And so if we have overcommitted ourselves, then it's almost like we go on strike. And then that can have a really negative impact on our relationships and even on our reputation. If we've overcommitted ourselves and then we're drowning and we can't finish anything, that can be destructive. I remember my last semester of grad school, I was overcommitted everywhere, and I just about decided I'm just not going to turn in this paper, and I would have failed that class. The only thing that kept me going was like, after all the tears and the venting, my husband's like, whatever it takes, you've come this far, so many semesters of 6 hours of grad school, spring, summer, and fall. You can do this. But I mean, I almost didn't. And the reason why I didn't have the time carved out to finish that paper is because I was still doing all these other things that I couldn't say no to. So sometimes that can be destructive. Good question, though. All right. Anyone have anything that stands out to them about being an obliger? Because we had several obligers in the house. All right. And we didn't have any rebels, but it's good to understand rebels. Or we didn't have any rebels that told us that they were a rebel because I told them to write it in the chat section. So that could be why they didn't say it was a rebel. All right, so dealing with a rebel can resist inner and outer expectations. They put a high value on freedom, choice, self-expression, and authenticity. That is my son to a core. He is a leader. My youngest son, he is a leader, and I love that about him. But it was really frustrating sometimes as the mother of my teenage rebel. If someone asks or tell them to do something, they're likely to resist. And because of that, they may be easy to manipulate by using their spirit of resistance. Like, I'll show you, once you can't make me, you're not the boss of me. Have you heard that reverse psychology where you like tell them not to do it and then they're going to do it just to prove you otherwise? So that could be a way to manipulate. They may choose to act out of love, a sense of mission, or belief in a cause. So it's not like there's no motivation, but it needs to be their motivation. And it doesn't always meet other people's expectations of things. They might have trouble telling themselves what to do, even when it's something they want to do, because there's just that resistance. They may love to meet a challenge in their own way, in their own time. And that was what was so beautiful to see about my son is, I mean, he is knocking it out of the stinking park now. But it was because this is my thing. I'm working out because this is my thing. I did super well in school after high school because that was for me. This was for my future. And to see how he's done all that and still, I mean, he's a great communicator and he's a wonderful friend. But it had to be in his own way, in his own time. And so that's where for me as his mom, I couldn't rush him, pressure him, guilt him, any of those things. That wasn't going to work for him. We had to have conversations, and I had to almost take not like an adult like approach with him, but way I communicated with him was different than the way I communicated with his brothers. So that it was effective communication for him. If they're in a long-term relationship in work or romance, their partner might be an obliger because it's a little easier to easier partner versus two rebels together. So wonderful strengths: independent minded, able to think outside the box, unswayed by conventional opinion, willing to buck social conventions, in touch with their authentic desires. Possible weaknesses: they can be resistant, struggle with repetitive or mandatory tasks, aka high school, act as though ordinary rules don't apply to them. Restless, they might feel it difficult to settle down in a job or a relationship or a city. and they're repelled by routine and planning. It's kind of like, I don't want to be constrained by all of those things. And so really a key strategy is the strategy of identity. Who am I? What impact? Like helping someone find their purpose. And once it's their purpose kind of driven life, that can be really helpful for a rebel. So anything stand out to you guys about being a rebel or knowing a rebel?
I was resistant when I was a kid. I
Mhm.
dropped out of school. School was just boring. I
Yep.
had no desire to be in school. I dropped out, got my
Yeah.
GED, went in the Navy. And then when I got to college finally, late in life, I flourished.
Yeah. It clicked and it was your thing. You also had some brain development, so that's good because our brains don't stop developing till we're 26. So that's great. And see, that's the thing is I always try to remind myself of I can't just be so looking at this little snapshot of someone's life as evidence of how the rest of their life is going to be. Sometimes, like my husband, he was quite a handful growing up. And if I had been his mom, based on the stories he's told me, I would have thought I was a complete and total failure as a mom. But they were consistent, they were available, they were consistent, they were available, they kept speaking into him, they held him accountable for things that he didn't want to be held accountable for. This day, he is a wonderful man. He's honorable, he's trustworthy, he's dependable. There's so many unbelievable qualities about him that just needed time to grow and develop. And, he just didn't fit in anyone's box. He's the only person in his family who's come to the United States. They all live down in Colombia. He just had just a different way of approaching the world. But if I had just been nose to the ground, oh my gosh, looking at them right now because they did, he wasn't like me. It's very easy for us to label or limit people if their way of doing things doesn't line up with our way that we think things should be done. Giving it time, having those effective supports, and understanding that people grow at their own pace is really powerful. So, all of this to say, what does this mean for us? Um, if you understand what motivates you, it helps you to make change by playing to your strengths and acknowledging your weaknesses and kind of having a plan for that. So, upholders, you just want to know what should be done, schedule away. Finding wonderful apps. My son loves the app Tick Tick, not TikTok. It's called Tick Tick. And you can actually create to-do lists like weekly, daily, monthly, and he's just and he loves it because he's like, I don't even have to think, Mom. Once I've already got it all set up, I just know on Wednesdays I'm going to clean the bathroom, and it's just I don't have to think about it. Me, I clean the bathroom on Friday evening if people are coming over on Saturday. Questioners, we want our justifications. The key strategy is clarification. Allow for that. Allow for that questioning. The questioning is not defiance. The questioning is them. I want clarification on this. And there are times in life where you just kind of have to. Not that whole parenting, do it because I said so. But I've even used an example like this is a phrase that I've used with my daughter. So lots of questions about why can't I go over to my guy that I like? Why can't I go over to his house and be in his room? And she's not agreeing with me on certain things like limits and boundaries and stuff like that. She's questioning them. Now we have great conversations, but she's questioning, she's pushing, like, why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? And so sometimes I've even used the analogy. I'm like, okay, Sophia, when you were 3 years old, there are things that you were so mad that we wouldn't let you do. We wouldn't let you walk in the street. We wouldn't let you not hold our hand in the Walmart parking lot. We wouldn't let you put your fingers in an electric socket. We wouldn't let you, and you were so mad, and you would, why? I want to do this. And you just didn't understand. You didn't have the context. I said, there will be some things for you as a teenager, but you're not going to fully understand why your papa and I have these rules and boundaries for you. You're not going to understand that. And you're questioning it. And, we tell you it's about keeping you safe. And in your mind, you don't agree, like, I can be safe just fine. And so there will be things that we disagree on, and that's okay. But just realize this is coming from a place of safety and love. And she's able to accept a lot of those things, but she's a questioner. So really, you're going to have some really good communication skills if you're in a relationship with a questioner, and don't view their questions as defiance. Obligers, we need accountability, and that's okay. Set up external accountability. If you are trying to start exercising, make sure you're meeting someone to exercise, or something like that. For me, I set deadlines for myself and make sure the people that are important know about them. So then I know I'll rise to that expectation. Rebels, they want some freedom to do things their own way. So you have to accommodate some of that out of the box thinking. And especially if you are very much enjoy being in the box, and there's nothing wrong with that either. So really helping them identify, who am I? Where do I fit in the world? And really, instead of doing this because you have to, what impact do you want to make on the world? What difference can you make? Not me telling you what to do. But these are all beautiful things. All right. And always remember, there is no one perfect way to be. Understand who you are so you can use your strategies for success. I know a lot of us, as we get older, we just let go of some of these ridiculous expectations that we've held ourselves hostage by all of our lives. But still, when we see maybe someone being more productive, or we see someone maybe doing this or doing that, there's no one perfect way to be. Yes, my son and my sister are super productive and they are goal oriented, and that's great. But you know what? I can sit down in the nitty gritty and have hard conversations with people who need support. I'm willing to go in and help and do those extra things, and be nurturing and those kinds of things, where I'm not worried about. I love taking care of people, and I'm in a field that allows me to do that. I'm an educator and a school counselor and a counselor. It allows me to do that. Just understand who you are so that we're not constantly guilting ourselves for not being this way. Hey, if you can't be that way, you can't be that way. Go with your strengths and have a plan for your weaknesses. That's all part of it. All right. So now what can I do? All right. So let's take a quick look at things, because I always run over. 50% of our type is predisposed. Thanks, mom and dad. 10% of how we are the way we are is related to life circumstances, experiences, and there's about 40% that's working in our choice. So I can't control my genetics and all that thing. I can't control some of my life experiences, where I was born, what family I was born into, some of those things. But there's a lot of choice that we can do. So let's, if how we feel is 40% of how we feel is up to us, let's make it count. And one thing that really will help with changing feelings of well-being, changing and managing stress, is to develop gratitude, and literally develop a habit of gratitude. Now, I don't have a ton of time based on how much time we have left with each other to dive deep into this, but gratitude, purposefully focusing on something that brings me joy, that I'm thankful, that I'm grateful for. When I am practicing daily, habitually, this attitude of gratitude with whatever systems I can come up with that work for me and my tendency, I'm literally rewiring my brain. Our brains are not wired to be grateful. Our brains are wired to be reactive. We're always looking for the next threat. It's much easier to complain than it is to, do other things. It's very natural to want to do that. And that's typically how a lot of our brains are wired. You can rewire the brain when we have this gratitude. The science of gratitude. It was a wonderful resource. Individual responses to gratitude: increased happiness and positive mood, more satisfaction with life, less materialistic, less likely to experience burnout, better physical health, better sleep, less fatigue, lower levels of cellular inflammation, like your body is not as inflamed, greater resiliency, encourages development of patience, humility, and wisdom. Benefits of practicing the art of gratitude. For groups, it increases pro-social behaviors, strengthens relationships, can help employees' effectiveness too. If we are, as a group, as a team, looking for things that we're grateful for, and can definitely increase job satisfaction. So I will email you several resources. Consider keeping a gratitude journal. That could be a really helpful thing to do. Also, have some prompts for some conversations. Things like, hey, what made you smile lately? What are you good at doing? Who can you count on? What do you enjoy? What inspires you? What are some activities that bring you joy? Or people that bring you joy? What makes you happy? What relaxes you? These are great conversation starters. If you work with children or like an educator, if you run a morning meeting, this would be good. These are also great dinner time conversations to have with a partner or family members or your children. These are wonderful prompts that start to get us tuned in to gratitude. There's even gratitude apps because what do we carry with us everywhere? Our phones. So I'll email you some of those gratitude apps. Now, just remember this though. Stress rewires the brain. It keeps us in reactive mode. It's constantly activating our sympathetic nervous system. Gratitude rewires the brain. We are activating our parasympathetic nervous system, our calm down response. So we can definitely can't control all of the stressors in our life, the lack of time or certain obligations at certain seasons of life. And for those of you who are in that last semester of grad school, I'm so proud of you in college. You're almost there. May 1st is a big deadline for a lot of you. Gratitude rewires the brain. I'm not trying to be positive. I develop a feeling of positivity. So if gratitude and practicing gratitude and lots of different strategies for that helps us with stress and increases our sense of well-being, how can I use my knowledge of the tendencies to start this new practice? So if you're an upholder, schedule it. Maybe you would really like an app that's going to help you with that. Or you, in your daily schedule, you're going to write down something that you're thankful for. There was a lady that came to as a public speaker. She was the Oklahoma Teacher of the Year. And she did a big rally for the Jenks school teachers and all the staff. And she had was participating in this blog called One Good Thing. Every single day, she wrote down one good thing, no matter how small. And what she found, just as an educator, how energized she felt after several months of doing this, her whole approach to the same exact student changed. Her feelings about that student changed simply from this practicing gratitude. So make gratitude part of your daily routine or part of the daily meal. This is a conversation thing that we have every time we're going to schedule it. Or if you are making other changes in your life, schedule steps towards those goals. Break it down into manageable steps and schedule it. Upholders, that will be a great strategy for you to use your tendency. Questioners, when it comes to implementing gratitude, look at the research. The research will inspire you. Look at those things, read some books, get some questions answered, and that will really could increase your motivation to increase gratitude. So there will be several links and things that, and whatever change you're trying to make, give yourself some time to question, to look into that. There's nothing wrong with the questions. You might set some sort of deadline to like, I'm going to look into this for a month, and then I'm going to make a decision about what to do. Because we don't want to get into that analysis paralysis where we're constantly seeking information. I've got something in the chat section. Oh, thank you, Hannah. Bless me. Obligers. Check in with a friend or a family member daily with your daily gratitude thought. If you know they're expecting to hear that from you, if you know you're going to, it's part of your routine because you've literally set up like an accountability partner or, something like that, that can be a really helpful motivator for you. Or if you are trying to make changes in other areas, how can you work in accountability to that? I mean, I've even told this to my assistant principal. Hey, I'm telling you this, that we're going to have this meeting, so I know that'll make me get my stuff ready. Great. Have a partner who will help you with that. Maybe you partner up with an upholder that is really good about getting things done. I even went to one of my friends' houses when I was this was years ago when my middle son was in kindergarten. He's now 25. And literally, she was the most organized person I've ever met in my life. You know what I did? I went to her house and I said, okay, Jan, I want you to tell me how you do stuff. How do you plan for your meals? How do you keep your house clean? Like, I don't know how to do that. What do you do? And I literally wrote down all the things. And then we created a whole series of classes on it. I'm like, people need to hear this because her systems were unbelievable. And for me, like being able to go and spend and be mentored by someone who was like an upholder who just got things done and no one had to tell her to do that, that was inspiring to me and really helpful. And also knowing that I was going to talk to her about some of those things was also that accountability piece for me. And rebels, make this about you. Do this for you because you get to. It's good for you. No one's making you do this. Gratitude is good for you. It's good for your health. It's good for your life. It's good for your life satisfaction. look at it in that way. And that could be a way to be more motivated to make some change in those areas. Now, couple of summary reminders. I'm only a few minutes over. Um, your personality type, your tendency, it's just who you are, and that's okay. Every personality type has strengths, every personality type has weaknesses. Learn to work with yours. You can't be like someone else. You are who you are, and you are making a difference and an impact on the world. Another thing that would be a great area for change for any and all of us would be to increase our focus on gratitude, that daily practice focusing on gratitude. It can really, it's like it changes your glasses. It changes the way you view the world because you're literally rewiring your brain to be looking for the good. One favorite quote I have, Mr. Rogers talked about, and if you never got to watch Mr. Rogers growing up, I'm so sorry for you. Just such a lovely human being. But he remembers as a young child, there was a big fire or something like that. It was a tragedy. And, it's very overwhelming to see the tragedy. And his mom said, look for the helpers. And ever since then, he would look for the helpers. Like, oh, even in the worst situations, there are beautiful things that are going on and inspiring things that are going on. There are always helpers. Um, so that is, just that daily practice of gratitude and looking for the good is a beautiful thing for you. Use your personality type to figure that out. Now, I always send my presentations to Erin. She's going to send it on to you and any extra handouts that I find that might be helpful for you as you dig into your upholders. It could be a fun family activity to take the quiz. It could be a fun work activity to take the quiz. Anything that's going to help you understand yourself and the people in your life could be a good thing.